Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Yet another episode of Crushing Fantasy Football. I am Bryce Lockridge, your host of the show. All right, guys, today I'm going to be giving you guys a list of my top 8 quarterback wide receiver stacks. Now, I'm going to be counting down from the quarterback stack that's lowest on my list, but still very, very good, obviously, because they're in my top 8. But I'm going to be going from my 8th best quarterback wide receiver stack to my 1st best quarterback wide receiver stack. And the reason I feel like it's important to do this video is because, obviously, with the increased rushing upside for quarterbacks and the increased target share for wide receivers, quarterback wide receiver stacks are more important than they have ever been. And they're going to be a huge part of your fantasy team. Now, if you've been keeping up with my channel, I did a video earlier in the offseason talking about the top 5, but I was looking back on that video and I did not go into enough detail on each of the players and why I had them ranked. I was a little bit too brief on everything. So I wanted to go into more detail. And also I wanted to go deeper into a top 8 instead of a top 5, because I feel like there's 8 very relevant quarterback wide receiver stacks that are all very viable options for you to really get that centerpiece to your fantasy team, which nowadays a quarterback wide receiver stack is that centerpiece. It's one of the most important things you can have. So I'm going to start right here with the first stack on my list, and that is Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley. Now, we've got a Trevor Lawrence who threw 584 pass attempts last season. This is very good. Top 7 in the NFL as far as pass attempts. 95.1 true passer rating, top 6 in the NFL. This dude was efficient. He was throwing the ball a ton. And now we add Calvin Ridley to the offense. I cannot express how much of a boost this is going to give the offense. Calvin Ridley is a tremendous wide receiver. A lot of people are writing him off because they haven't seen him play in a while. But it's Calvin freaking Ridley. He's going to make the offense so much better. I have very good reason to believe that this is going to be a top 5 NFL offense with their passing weapons, with the generational talent in Trevor Lawrence and a stud running back in Travis Etienne. There is no reason that this offense should not be one of the best offenses in the NFL. They're going to be putting points on the board like crazy. So he's going to throw for a lot of yards and throw a lot of touchdown passes. Obviously, he doesn't have the rushing upside of quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts. That's why he's not higher on my list here. But the passing total upside is crazy for the Jaguars. And on the Calvin Ridley end of the stack, this is a guy who in his last full season, guys, 2,000 plus air yards, first in the NFL. 40 deep targets, first in the NFL. 22 red zone targets, second in the NFL. This guy absolutely dominated so many vital wide receiver statistics. It was an anomaly of a season, an unbelievable fantasy wide receiver season for Calvin Ridley in his last full year. And that was with a late career Matt Ryan. So if Calvin Ridley has that sort of upside, with a late career Matt Ryan, just imagine the upside that he has with a third-year Trevor Lawrence. A third-year Trevor Lawrence will be by far and away the best quarterback that Calvin Ridley has ever played with. So no disrespect to Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan that's already late in his career is in no way as good of a quarterback as Trevor Lawrence is going to be in this coming third season for Trevor Lawrence in the NFL. So the ceiling for Calvin Ridley is ridiculous. The ceiling for Trevor Lawrence is ridiculous. And best of all, you can get these guys both late in the draft. You can get Calvin Ridley in like round 6. I don't understand why he's slipping so late. I don't understand why people are drafting Christian Kirk ahead of him. It's like they're forgetting how good Calvin Ridley is. He's going to be by far and away the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. This quarterback wide receiver stack is going to be awesome. On to the next one on my list, which is Tua and Tyreek Hill. Now, Tua last year, 18.4 fantasy points per game. This was top 10 in the NFL. Obviously, he had the concussion and he missed some time and everything like that. But this is a guy who was very efficient when he played, especially with his deep balls. He had a 50% deep ball completion percentage. This was first in the NFL. To convert on 50% of your deep balls is pretty unbelievable. So obviously having Tyreek Hill certainly helps with that. And Tyreek Hill on that end of the stack, we've got a guy who has a 31.6% team target share. 2,000 last season, a 31.6% team target share. There's really no reason to think that this target share is going to go down like at all. I mean, he's probably going to receive a pretty similar target share this year. Now, if Jalen Waddle received more target share and it knocked Tyreek Hill's target share down to closer around like 30% instead of 31.6, which is absolutely ridiculous, I could totally see that happening, but I have very good reason to believe that his target share will be over 30% again, which is obviously freaking insane, especially considering how good this guy is at catching balls downfield and creating separation in deep routes. This guy led the league in deep targets last year with 36 deep targets. That's not going to slow down anytime soon. If he led the league in deep targets again, none of us would be surprised. He certainly has the upside to be the quarterback 1, and still of any receiver in the entire NFL, this dude has the highest weekly ceiling. So having him on your team is obviously a tremendous advantage. You're going to have to take this guy in the first round, but on the Tua end of the stack, you could wait and get him as like the 12th quarterback off the board. So if you want to invest your first round pick in Tyreek Hill, go ahead and stack him with Tua later in the draft. Next on my list is going to be Josh Allen and Steffon Diggs. Now, this is a quarterback wide receiver stack that out of all the quarterback wide receiver stacks I have on my list, probably has the highest upside as far as total points that they can get you. But you have to take very early. You have to draft these guys very early in the draft, is what I'm saying. You got to take Steffon Diggs in round 1, pretty much. Maybe in some cases, the beginning of round 2. You're going to have to take Josh Allen in rounds 2 or round 3. Okay, so you have to invest incredibly high draft capital to get these guys on your team. That's the only reason why they're not significantly higher on my list here. But as far as overall fantasy points, this could be the quarterback wide receiver stack to have in fantasy. I mean, Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills offense, they play playground ball, basically. I mean, 80 deep ball attempts last year. 5,200 air yards that Josh Allen threw for. This was first in the NFL. And he carried the ball 126 times, which is top 3 in the NFL. 776 rushing yards, 26 carries within the red zone, 7 rushing touchdowns. This quarterback is everything you want in a fantasy quarterback. He is the modern day fantasy quarterback that just fits the dual threat profile that you want. I mean, this dude can dominate in all phases of the game. He has a chance every single season to be the quarterback 1 in all of fantasy. He was the quarterback 2 last year, quarterback 1 the season before that. This dude's freaking awesome. On the Steffon Diggs end of the stack, this guy had 155 targets last year, 110 receptions, 18.9 fantasy points per game, 1,400 plus receiving yards, which was 5th in the NFL, 2.87 yards per route run. Every time he ran a route, he was making something good happen for his offense. This dude is one of the best receivers in the game. And this quarterback wide receiver stack is going to get you a ton of points if you want it. But just know you're going to have to invest some pretty early picks to get both these guys. So you just got to figure out if that's important to you. Next on my list is going to be Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Now, this is a stack that is just got some crazy upside. Outside of, Josh Allen and Steffon Diggs, it might be the next best quarterback wide receiver stack as far as projected fantasy points. I mean, we've got a Jalen Hurts who 165 carries last season, first in the NFL, 11 carries per game, 11 carries per game at the quarterback position. That's absolutely ridiculous. 43 carries within the red zone. This is first in the NFL, 760 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns. This dude was just absolutely awesome with his legs. Obviously, he's got Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and A.J. Brown to throw the ball to, so he has tons of passing weapons. He has a good arm, tons of passing upside. The sky's the limit for this offense. They're probably going to be the favorite to win the Super Bowl and be one of the best offenses in the NFL. So you want every bit of Jalen Hurts, but you're probably going to have to get him in rounds 2 or 3. He goes higher and higher as we get closer and closer to the season. So be ready to invest a very early pick on him. And it's the same case with A.J. Brown. You're probably going to have to get A.J. Brown in rounds 2 or 3. But last year he had a 29% target share, 1,496 receiving yards, 543 yards after the catch. This dude is a monster with the ball in his hands. 3.01 yards per route run, the second best yards per route run efficiency in the entire NFL for A.J. Brown, and 11 touchdowns. This dude was a freaking monster. You're going to have to take both of these guys early in the draft, but their potential for overall fantasy points is through the roof. Next stack on my list is going to be Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen. Now, we got some pretty darn good value here because you can get Keenan Allen in round 4. You can get Justin Herbert in like round 7. And both of these guys should be going earlier in the draft. I mean, we're looking at a Justin Herbert who was second in the league in passing yards last year. Okay. Second in the league in passing attempts. Okay. 25 passing touchdowns. And so we know that this guy has tremendous passing upside. He's also a big dude that can run the ball. 6'6", 230 pounds, runs a sub 4.7. I mean, this dude he's an athletic specimen. I mean, I'm not going to lie. He is. And with that being the case, he has rushing upside as well. He just wasn't rushing the ball last season because, he had the rib fracture. So they were just being a little bit careful with him running the ball a lot. This coming season, he's going to be 100% going into the year, meaning that he's going to return to form and being the dual threat quarterback that we know he could be. So not only is he going to provide ridiculous passing numbers, he's going to include some rushing touchdowns as well. Keep in mind that, his first 2 seasons, he had a total of 8 rushing touchdowns combined in those 2 seasons. So he does have the ability to score some rushing touchdowns, and we're going to see that kind of return to form this year, considering the fact that he has a whole offseason to heal up from the rib injury. And then on the Keenan Allen end of the stack, we got a guy who, is one of the best route runners in this league. And even though the team added Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen is the slot receiver, and he's still going to see almost just as many targets out of the slot. He's a wide receiver that we know can average close to 10 targets a game from a season-long standpoint, playing in an offense that's going to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. That, and considering the fact that he gets peppered with targets in the red zone, I love Keenan Allen this coming season. And the Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert stack is pretty awesome because you can get both of these guys You can get Keenan Allen in the 4th round and Justin Herbert in round 7. So the value is awesome. Next quarterback wide receiver stack on my list is going to be Dak Prescott and Ceedee Lamb. Now, Dak Prescott, you look back at his 2019 season, 4,900 passing yards. 2021 season, 4,449 passing yards. This guy, he has the potential to throw for a ton of yards, and we know that he has rushing upside. It's just, last season the numbers were a little bit down because he missed pretty significant time. He had the injury in week 1, and, he missed the first 4.5 games of the season. So, with that being the case, his numbers were just down from a fantasy perspective. But let's not forget, 2021, he had some of the most passing yards in the league. This is a quarterback that can light up the scoreboards. We now add Brandon Cooks to the offense. There are a ton of passing weapons in this offense, and the upside for the offense is tremendously high, considering the fact that, Ezekiel Elliott is probably not going to be part of this backfield this season. So the overall amount of rushing attempts that this team takes is probably going to be a little bit lower. And with that being the case, that means they're going to pass more. That means more passing upside for Dak Prescott. That means Dak Prescott's going to get to run the ball more. Both of these things are tremendously important. And so Dak Prescott is awesome. He comes at a great value in the draft. He's going as like the 9th quarterback off the board, somewhere around there. On the Ceedee Lamb end of the stack, we got a receiver that saw 156 targets last year. This was 4th in the NFL. He had a 28.7% team target share, saw 26 deep targets. He was the wide receiver 5 in fantasy with 1,359 receiving yards to account for a lot of his fantasy points. And this is a guy who we know is a tremendous talent. He was a first-round draft pick for a reason. This stack is awesome. You're going to have to invest really high draft capital to get Ceedee Lamb. You're going to have to get him in round 2, which I think might be a little bit pricey for Ceedee Lamb. But obviously, Dak Prescott, you can get at an awesome value. So on the quarterback end of the stack, you can at least wait till a little bit later. So if you plan on taking Ceedee Lamb early, or if you're in a spot where taking Ceedee Lamb feels like the best pick you have available, and you take Ceedee Lamb in rounds 2 or 3, go ahead and stack him with Dak Prescott, because this quarterback wide receiver stack is going to put up a ton of points. Next on my list is going to be Joe Burrow and Jamaar Chase. Now, Joe Burrow and Jamaar Chase, obviously freakishly high upside for both of them. Jamaar Chase could easily be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy this year. If that happens, I'm not going to be surprised at all. If you look at his past, on the Joe Burrow end of the stack, let's start with Joe Burrow. With Joe Burrow, his past 2 seasons, 4,500 plus passing yards. Last year, 100.6 true passer rating. This is top 3 in the NFL. He actually carried the ball 20 times within the red zone and had 5 rushing touchdowns, which is fifth in the NFL. So this dude has rushing upside. I think there's kind of a myth out there that Joe Burrow is only a quarterback that can pass. Now, despite the fact that he doesn't necessarily have elite speed, he does have awesome rushing upside just due to the fact that this team is in the red zone often. So just by default, he's going to have a pretty decent amount of carries within the red zone just because they're always threatening to score because it's a hyper-efficient offense. So this is a guy who is a dual-threat quarterback and offers you rushing production plus the potential to be tops in the league in passing yards. So Joe Burrow is, an awesome quarterback to take for your fantasy team. You can get him in rounds 4 or 5 of the draft. Jamaar Chase, you're obviously going to have to take him with one of the first overall picks. So we're investing insane draft capital to get Jamaar Chase. But with that being the case, this is a guy who, despite missing 5 games last year, had 26 red zone targets, which is 3rd in the NFL, and 9 touchdowns, which is 4th in the NFL. So just imagine what these numbers can be like if he actually plays a full healthy season. The fact that he missed that much time and was still 3rd in the league in red zone targets is incredibly impressive. So Jamaar Chase, sky's the limit, could be the best player in all of fantasy this year. You're going to have to get him in the first round, but if you take Jamaar Chase as your first pick, I would stack him with Joe Burrow. Next and final stack on my list, and this is the one that I'm way more excited about than any quarterback wide receiver stack on my list, and that is Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. Not only does this quarterback wide receiver stack have the potential to produce a top 5 quarterback in Deshaun Watson and probably a top 5 or maybe a top 7 wide receiver in Amari Cooper, that is the ceiling for both these players. You can get them at awesome draft values. You don't have to get Deshaun Watson until round 7 or 8, probably by the time the season starts. And Amari Cooper, you can get him in round 5. So we're looking at a Deshaun Watson who, if you look back at his career in Houston, 2018, 2019, 2020, every single one of these years, he was top 5 in fantasy points per game. So this is a guy who is a tremendously talented quarterback who is capable of producing awesome fantasy quarterback numbers no matter where he plays, because he was in a terrible system in Houston. His only weapon was DeAndre Hopkins. Outside of that, the team was just bad, and he was still an elite fantasy quarterback. So now you insert him into a Browns offense with a great offensive line to block for him, an awesome running back in the backfield, a plethora of awesome wide receiving weapons in Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore. I mean, this team is loaded. So, if Deshaun Watson could do that in Houston, just imagine what he could do in the Browns offense. This guy's ceiling is top 1 quarterback overall in fantasy, and you can get him in the later rounds. Tremendous value. That's why this is the number 1 stack on my list. The value for the potential upside is just awesome. So moving on to the Amari Cooper end of the stack, this is a guy, 1,160 receiving yards last year, 1,765 air yards. This is top 5 in the NFL. So, he saw a ton of receiving yards. He saw a ton of air yards. 16 red zone targets, which was top 12 in the NFL. So he's getting targeted heavily within the red zone due to his awesome contested catch abilities and his awesome route running abilities. We know this is one of the best route runners in the entire NFL. Amari Cooper is about to have the best fantasy season that he's ever had with Deshaun Watson throwing him the ball, because if you look at Amari Cooper's career, the best quarterback that he ever had throwing him the ball was Dak Prescott. And there's miles of difference between Deshaun Watson's talent and Dak Prescott's talent. They're not even in the same they're not even remotely close. Deshaun Watson is far and away better. So we now add Deshaun Watson in this Browns offense. The potential for this offense is being the best offense in the entire NFL. I'm not saying that that's likely, but it certainly could happen. And there's no way in the world that this is not going to be a top 10 NFL offense. They're going to be very good. So the Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper stack with the potential upside for fantasy points and with the tremendous value that you get these guys for in the draft is a massive league-winning play. So try to get this quarterback wide receiver stack in at least a few of your leagues. All right, guys, appreciate it. Catch you later.